Okay, I think we are good to go. So good evening, folks. My name is Kessina Lee. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Regional Director here in Southwest Washington for Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. And welcome to our digital open house. This is intended to help the public learn about what's going on in the region and ask WDFW leadership any questions that you might have. Just a quick reminder that this meeting is being recorded. So, and we know it's election night. So we want to make sure we encourage you to go hit the polls or drop your ballot off. And because the meeting will be recorded, you can always view it later and ask your questions via email if needed. But if you're joining us live, we're delighted that you're here. So I want to turn it over to our director, Kelly Susewind, who's joining us for our, I guess, second annual Zoom regional open house for Southwest Washington. We did a couple of these in person and now here we are in this format. So welcome, Kelly.
Thanks, Kessina. As Kessina said, my name is Kelly Susewind and I use the pronouns he, his, and I'm the director at the Department of Fish and Wildlife. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I know this is, we hope this is a good opportunity for you to engage with the leadership. As Kessina said, something we started a few years ago, started in person and with the COVID, obviously have moved to a virtual platform. We'll probably do some mix of those in the future. This is really the opportunity to engage with the local leadership. These are obviously through the virtual format available statewide, but we focus on a region at a time. Kessina will tell you a little bit about the Southwest region, Region 5. And I'm really excited tonight because we have basically the entire regional team here. So these are the folks, if you make a call into the region, you stop by the region, these are the folks that you see. These are the folks that are making the calls, the leadership decisions for your region. So it's a great opportunity to get to know them. We really want to be part of your community and interact with them. So this is a great opportunity. We'll move through a short presentation, but my favorite part is the question and answers. That's where you can really, you own the agenda. So we look forward to that. I'll be quiet now so we can get towards that. I'm turn it back to Kessina.
All right, thanks, Kelly. So we're going to start tonight with some updates on a few topics about work going on in the department and the region. We are committing, as Kelly said, most of the time tonight to the Q&A. But to help us with that, as Kelly said, we've got our regional management team members here, and I want to give them all a chance to introduce themselves to you. So I believe we're going to go to gallery view. I'm not sure. I think folks are coming on. All right. There we go. All right. Sandra, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sandra Yonker. I'm the Wildlife Program Manager for Southwest Washington, which is, since we haven't defined it yet, Klickitat, Skamania, Clark, Wahkiakum, Cowlitz, and Lewis counties. I have a great team in the wildlife program here. We have, across the 6 counties, we have 4 wildlife areas: Mount St. Helens, Shillapu, Cowlitz Wildlife Area, and the Klickitat Wildlife Area. We also have several district wildlife biologists working on anything from western pond turtles to cougars to elk to pika to you name it, managing those populations and ensuring that we have a good handle on those. We also have conflict specialists here in the region dedicated to working with landowners and homeowners on any human-wildlife interactions, both positive and negative, and helping people to live with wildlife and have tools available to them so that if there are any issues going on, they can call these folks and get some tools to help them manage living in places with wildlife. We also have many, many access sites and have a very dedicated staff running around the entire region, cleaning those restrooms, doing all the weed work there and making sure that your access experience is a good one across the region. And then we also oversee the private lands work, which is working with private landowners, looking to work with landowners on habitat enhancements as well as hunter access. So that kind of gives a quick overview of all the things that we are busy on, and it's a joy to work with all of the folks here and with the team. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Dave.
Hey everybody, I'm Dave Howe. I'm the Regional Habitat Program Manager here for the department. We have a team of, my pronouns are he, his, and we have a team of 8 habitat biologists here in Southwest Washington and various parts of the region that work on 4 primary work functions. They issue HPAs, hydraulic project approvals, for the protection of fish life. They work with local governments on land use planning type issues. They work on salmon recovery projects with various sponsors here trying to restore endangered salmon. And lastly, they work with Department of Natural Resources to make sure that we prescribe the correct buffers when there's a timber harvest in a particular area. So that's our team and that's our group. We've got some turnover here recently that we're trying to hire for, but it's a great group of folks, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Dave. Captain Wickersham.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff Wickersham. I'm the enforcement captain here in Region 5, and my pronouns are he and his. I have a great staff of fish and wildlife officers here in the region through all the counties that Sandra already spoke about. And we're primarily charged with regulation and enforcement of the state's fish and wildlife laws. However, we are statewide peace officers and can address any type of violation that we find in the field or any type of public safety incident. My staff are also working quite closely with wildlife program on dangerous wildlife interactions, fish program on ESA issues, and habitat on those same ESA issues facing our fish species. Region 5 is a great station for almost everything under the sun, including fish and wildlife harvest, and we are out in the field to help the public. So if you see one of us, be sure to ask us a question and we will be sure to help you get a good answer. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Captain. Bryce.
Hi, Kessina. Thank you. I'm Bryce Glasser. I'm the Region 5 Southwest Washington Fish Program Manager. I use the pronouns he and his. And so in the fish program, we cover a lot of ground in terms of fisheries management, things like spawning ground surveys, fishing rules, regulations, monitoring activities for our fish populations. And we essentially cover from the mouth of the Columbia up to the Klickitat River. And we've got about 60 employees on the fish management side of things. We also have 14 hatcheries that we operate currently in Region 5, and we've got about 75 employees there. So lots of fish production and stream surveying work happening right now in the fall, and just glad to be here and hoping to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Bryce. Charlene.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Charlene Hurst. I'm the Columbia River Management Unit Lead. I am also in the fish program like Bryce's, but my unit focuses on the main stem. I use the pronouns she and hers, and in our unit, we have about 25 to 40 folks, depending on the season. We have quite a few seasonal staff to monitor our fisheries. And our unit really manages sort of 4 different components. The first one is the hydro system in the main stem. The second one are fisheries. The third one is sturgeon, smelt, and lampreys research work and stock assessments. And lastly, the pike minnow sport reward program, which just finished for the year on October 17th, but is typically open from mid-April through September most years. Thanks, Kessina.
All right, thanks, Charlene. Michelle.
Hi, good evening. I'm Michelle Mulhern. I am responsible for the facility management of our Region 5 headquarters office in Ridgefield. I also support our regional director, and I supervise our customer service team.
Thank you, Michelle. So often if you call, generally, if you call us here in the region, you will get Michelle's team on the phone. So glad you're here tonight, Michelle. So I think we are ready to move. Are we moving into our PowerPoint? We want to just give a little bit of background on our region. We are organized, so the agency around the state is organized into 6 regions. Our region includes, as Sandra said, Klickitat, Skamania, Clark, Cowlitz, Lewis, and Wahkiakum counties. Our headquarters is located in Ridgefield. As you know, we've got.
Kessina, can you hold tight? I'm struggling with the PowerPoint here. Hold on
Okay.
just a second.
I thought I was just going to wing it. Happy to wait.
And puppets.
Hold on.
Stretch. All right, give us just a second, folks. We do have a PowerPoint. There we go. Okay. So here's the 6 regions I mentioned, as you can see. So the director will be hosting open houses in the various regions over the next couple months, I believe. So next slide. I think we're not quite in slideshow view yet, maybe. We might just be having a little bit of a lag.
Did that move forward?
Not yet. We're not in slideshow view. There we go. That should work.
It's showing me that we are, so.
Interesting. Is it just me? Is anyone I'm seeing? No, it's not just me.
No, it's not just you.
It's always worth asking. Wouldn't be the first time.
Let me try one more thing.
All righty, we'll give it a second. Okay. Well, I think in the meantime, I can keep talking and we can kind of catch up. There we go. So there's we've got the Southwest region slide now, Diane. So I don't know if you can advance to the next one. There we go. And so I think this is actually, Kelly, where I'm going to kick it over to you for some updates on your end.
Okay, thank you, Kessina. We usually always have an interest in what's going on headquarters, legislative wise, budget wise. So we're heading into the 2022 legislative session. This is a short session, so the sessions alternate between 105 and 60-day sessions. This year is the 60-day. We call it the sprint. So it's a short session. It's really indicated for minor upgrades or minor tweaks on budget side of things and fairly short list of potential bills. So we kept our bills short this year, and hopefully these are, well, I won't jinx it by saying they should be easily passable, but we feel like they're good bills that really help us promote the opportunity. The first one you see is the making hunting and fishing more accessible. This is really a summary of a whole bunch of little items like aligning youth ages at 16 years instead of 15, making resident eligibility for college students and military folks, being able to use a temporary fishing license for opening day of lowland lakes, which hasn't been an option in the past. And we're hoping that brings more people out and they get hooked, pun intended, on fishing while they're out there and have a great time. So it's just an assemblage of those types of bills. It has a pretty small fiscal impact to us, and we think it will really help promote opportunity. It also includes a $20 stipend for folks first passing their hunter safety education, so they can easily slide into that first license and hopefully be the first for the rest of their life. We have a cleanup, I call it a cleanup bill, sort of on expanding the eligibility of the ADA Advisory Committee. Right now, statutorily, we specify certain types of disabilities that make you eligible. We want to change that to just say if you have a disability, you're eligible to be on that committee. Also expand the committee. We will not use up existing spaces, but we'll add a couple of spaces for those that are experienced and expert at caregiving to disabled hunters and fishers, because they can bring a lot to that conversation. So it really is an opportunity to enhance that group, and they do great work for us in some of the work I think you heard the regional team talk about. Increasing access to state recreational lands. This is a bill right now under the Discover Pass. DNR can identify 12 free days a year. It's a great idea, great program, but technically those are only DNR lands. So we want to expand that to all state recreational lands so that we could, one, have our lands open as well, and also hopefully have a little coordination with DNR to pick some dates that really work for our primary customers. So again, another, I think, good bill to help us improve access. And then increasing electronic and print from home licenses. This is something we hear a lot about. It's something I'm excited about. Really being able, we've got some statutory limitations. We are prepared, have done some pilots already, want to move into electronic, either electronic, so you can use your phone, or print from home licenses. Just make it easier for folks. We think it'll also help us on things like catch record cards for timeliness of reporting and actually hopefully get a higher reporting level. So all in all, there'll be a lot of work involved in all that, but they all seem pretty direct and simple. And I think I'm hopeful that we have a lot of support in the legislature. We certainly have seen that so far as we've just kind of vetted these bills with legislators. Next slide. Okay, we have got a lot of budget bills, but we picked the ones probably most relevant here. So I'll go through these pretty quickly. You can get more information online if you want a more detailed description. The first is the Columbia River. This is for implementing alternative gears. It includes a license reduction or a buyback program, and alternative gears. It's for advancing our efforts on the Columbia in those two areas. We have successfully got buyback through a couple of years in a row right up to the end and got vetoed on both of them. So we're hopefully that we'll get a little better action this year. And this buyback program is the bulk of that $3.4 million. And it includes, will likely include an inactive buyback or buyback of inactive licenses, and also a reverse auction for other licenses. So we're trying to hit the gamut there to get that fleet size to a manageable size on the Columbia River. $2.4 million to improve monitoring. It says elk and deer, but it also includes bighorn sheep, mountain goat, some turkey. We do a lot of work, and you'll hear from staff probably about this, Sandra and others, on monitoring wildlife. We use a lot of collars. Collars wear out, batteries wear out. We have to recapture animals and replace those collars. So this is it's our routine work, but we don't have a distinct budget for it. So we're going in for an ask to make sure that we can stay on top of this work. Salmon Recovery and Growth Management Act. Under the Growth Management Act, cities, counties have to update their management plans, typically on an 8-year cycle. We're coming into the beginning of a cycle for a lot of big communities, counties, and cities. The Department of Fish and Wildlife serves as the subject matter expert on impacts to fish and wildlife for critical areas, ordinances, and those types of elements of a growth management plan. And so this is really an opportunity to get involved up front to make sure that the rules are set out in a way that's, one, helpful for people and protective of our resources. And it's really a great investment in that you get up front and that carries out through the life of the plan. It's a horrible thing if we miss that opportunity because, boy, you all know how fast we're growing. We really need to get smart about how we're putting people on the ground if we're going to continue to protect our resources. So that's what that money goes towards. Hatchery production and compliance. This is really on the production side. It's mostly for marking salmonids. We do a lot of work in this. It's a growing field for us. It's incredibly difficult, particularly in the times of COVID. Really proud of our staff. We have stayed on top of this and under almost impossible conditions. This is to implement that, add a few bodies to be able to help with that. And then compliance. We have permits like everybody else, and the cost of compliance for discharge permits and such is going up. So this covers those costs. The last one for safe and sanitary water access areas. Boy, we saw a surge in use of our lands statewide last year, which is a great thing. We want to continue that. I don't know if folks realize we've got 33 wildlife areas and over 500 water access sites across the state. We had 32 million visitors last year. with our increased use of those lands, we've got increased vandalism, increased demands on the sanitary system. So this is an opportunity for us to make sure that we've got stuff up, everything up to snuff on those properties, and that people will be able to continue enjoying them, hopefully at these high rates in a safe and sanitary manner. The last one is capital funding. This is Hofstadt Hills. It's acquired critical area for elk around St. Helens. I'm probably not going to say a whole lot more about that because we've got experts on the line that can cover it a little bit more as we go on, or if folks have questions. But it really was a land acquisition opportunity that we thought would be part of an overall agreement in the area, and it just did not happen. And we need to make sure it does happen. It's critical for our St. Helens elk herd. And I think that might be the end of my slides. Well, I did want to talk about, before we go to the Columbia River Pinnipeds, the slide's fine, it can stay. Just a big shout out to our staff. We've gone through a lot here recently with the mandatory vaccinations. It's been tough on everybody, all the community, with the COVID over the last 18 months or so. It's more than that now. I keep saying that, but it's longer. It's a ton of work. The administrative effort to actually implement that vaccine mandate is incredible by the time you go through all the labor work, the HR work, et cetera. Bottom line, in the end, we have about 40, it was 38 on the day of the deadline, October 18th, folks separating from service. So making sure everybody knows their opportunities, their rights, making sure that everybody's aware of whether or not we have proper information to show they've been vaccinated, offering those who haven't verified vaccination that information so they have everything they need to make their own choices. And then for those that decide to separate, actually going through that process. It's an onerous process, and it's filled with grief, quite frankly. We have folks who've spent their careers here who are leaving as a matter of choice under this proclamation. We support them, we respect them, we value their contributions, and we have to also keep the business of the agency moving along. I think we had 4 folks in Southwest and the Region 5 that are separated. The separations are roughly balanced across the programs. So about half the separations are in fish program, which is about half of our agency. So it's not one-to-one, but it's pretty close, and it's distributed through all 6 regions. The good news, if there is any good news in a situation like this, is we aren't really, they're distributed such that we'll have some hiccups for sure, but we don't have to shut down any particular branch of business. So we were worried, are we going to have an entire enforcement group not be no longer with us? Or are we going to have a hatchery that has insufficient staffing to continue? We won't have any of those types of challenges, so we'll be able to continue to deliver service, although we definitely have a little bit of more of a challenge, and we've got some vacancies, about 40 plus in addition to our regular vacancies, as well as we're continuing to process those folks. And so it's a sad time for our staff. I couldn't be more proud of how well we handled it, how well they came through it, and we will continue on and deliver that great service. And my thanks to those that for their service that chose to leave as well. I think with that, I think that'll wrap mine up, and we'll pass it back to Kessina for the Pinniped discussion.
All right, thank you, Kelly. So yeah, I just wanted to give some updates on some efforts here in Southwest Washington. A topic that I know is of interest to folks is management of Columbia River Pinnipeds that tend to find their way up to these impoundments in the river. In this case, Bonneville Dam that you see in the picture here at River Mile 145, and prey on our listed salmonids as they hold up at the base of these structures. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So essentially, we've been doing removals of California sea lions at Bonneville Dam since about 2008. And in those years, a little over 250 California sea lions were removed. And under that prior federal authority, there were several steps that needed to go through before that we needed to conduct before a sea lion was considered to be individually identifiable and having an impact on listed salmonids and was then eligible for removal. So we had to handle these animals multiple times. And what we saw over the period over that time was that we had increased animals in the basin, increasing impacts of predation, and we weren't able to remove stellar sea lions at that time. And we saw over that stellar sea lions were moving into the area, staying for longer, in fact, than the California sea lions that come seasonally outside of their breeding season in California. So the expanded authorization, so there was a congressional amendment to the Marine Mammal Protection Act that allowed for some specific place-based protection for our listed salmon stocks in the Columbia, and included the authority to remove stellar sea lions and allowed us to be more efficient, not have to handle these animals multiple times. It essentially said in these places, if sea lions are there, we have enough of a body of evidence collected over decades of research that we know these animals are having an impact if they are in these places where listed salmonids are. So we can go ahead and remove them without going through all of the steps that we had in the past. So that authority was issued in August of 2020. So we were able to start in the fall, and that would be the first time we were doing fall field work because the California sea lions that we were previously handling are not present in the fall. So this was to be the first season working on stellars and working in the fall. And of course, we were affected by COVID. So we partner on this work with WDFW and with CritFic, and the ability of staff to operate under COVID protocols at Bonneville Dam was really limited. So it was a very short season. And additionally, handling stellar sea lions comes with a learning curve. We had not removed these animals before. They are substantially larger than California's. So there are safety risks to staff. So learning to handle the animals safely, our staff safety was paramount. We need new equipment. These are big animals and they behave differently. They can be more aggressive than the Californias. So with all that said, our staff got out there and in the fall with COVID and everything else happening, and they did remove 6 stellar sea lions in fall of 2020 in that shortened limited season. Next slide. So then in spring 2021, that was our first full season under our new authorization. We had our COVID protocols dialed in and were able to remove 21 California sea lions and 13 stellar sea lions at Bonneville Dam. And as well, our partners at ODFW have a permit to do removals at Willamette Falls. And so they removed 8 California and 1 stellar sea lion. It's the same permit, but they do operations at Willamette Falls. And then fall of 2021, so our current season, so this is the first fall season where we're operating at full capacity. And so far, and it says 14, but the update as of today is 15 stellar sea lions have been removed so far this season. There's still about 25 animals at Bonneville Dam, and operations will be continuing there through the middle of this month. So that's the current update. And in the Q&A, we'll be happy to answer if folks have additional questions on that. But we are feeling really encouraged by how well our staff have adapted and have learned to safely handle these animals. You know, we have additional needs, you know, to continue to grow the program, but we're really encouraged by how it's going so far. And I think we are ready for the next slide. So yeah, here's the overall summary. So since the new authorization in August of 2020, a total of 29 California sea lions and 35 now stellar sea lions have been removed, which amounts to over 52,000 pounds of biomass. And we do have plans to start working in the tributaries. Our authorization does allow us to do removals in the tributaries of the Columbia that contain spawning habitat of listed salmonids. So our crews have been researching and working out how to do that. We need some new equipment and working out the techniques. We don't have the same infrastructure that we have at the dam. So that they've been building out how that's going to go and are planning to pilot that in 2022. Next slide. So the next update I wanted to provide was on our work in the Lewis River. And so I actually think we can go ahead and go to the next slide because it's going to help illustrate what we're talking about. So this is a map of the dams in the Lewis Basin, and hopefully you can see this, but there are 3 dams. So Pacificor operates 3 dams on the North Fork Lewis River. And those dams effectively block access to over 100 miles of quality salmon habitat. So to rectify this issue, in 2004, Pacificor committed to provide fish passage at each dam to support critical salmon recovery. And that commitment was formalized in a settlement agreement as part of Pacificor's renewed licenses to operate the Lewis River dams for the next 50 years. Several years ago, Pacificor proposed habitat restoration instead of building fish passage, and a provision in the settlement agreement allowed for this proposal. And if Pacificor established that the same or better benefits to salmon could be achieved through restoration instead of passage, that option, which was called the in lieu option, would be available and would come at substantial cost savings. So in 2019, the National Marine Fisheries Service and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service issued a preliminary determination that Pacificor did not need to construct fish passage, but could instead pursue habitat restoration at this time. So WDFW, along with the Cowlitz Indian Tribe and the Yakima Nation, Trout Unlimited, American Rivers, Native Fish Society, and others were very concerned about the uncertainty posed by habitat restoration as opposed to fish passage, as well as the time lost to recovery while monitoring was put in place to determine if restoration projects were effective once implemented. So the parties I just mentioned entered into a dispute process contesting the decision by the National Marine Fisheries Service and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So fast forward a couple of years and several layers of administrative dispute process. I won't go into the weeds on all of that, but last week, NMFS, the National Marine Fisheries Service, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service issued their final determination withdrawing those preliminary determination and indicating an anticipated return to the terms of the settlement agreement, which calls for fish passage at those Lewis River dams. So we, the department, along with the Cowlitz Indian Tribe, the Yakima Nation, and our NGO partners, welcome this decision. We believe the evidence shows that fish passage at Lewis River dams is one of the most substantial salmon recovery measures that can be implemented in the Lower Columbia region. And I will add too that while the Lewis fish passage issue highlights a difference at the policy level between WDFW and Pacificor, it's also important to understand that we still maintain a strong partnership with Pacificor on operational and technical issues. So some examples of that are operation of hatcheries on the Lewis, monitoring and evaluation work on the Lewis, and participation in processes outlined in the settlement agreement. So that includes participation in the terrestrial and aquatic coordinating committees and various subgroups. So we are very much looking forward to rolling up our sleeves and working with Pacificor and all the parties to the settlement agreement on implementing fish passage. We think this is still a partnership, and you know, it's a win for fish in the entire basin. And so what this diagram shows you is the arrows in green indicate where passage has is already happening. So upstream below Merwin Dam and downstream juveniles are collected above Swift, but those red arrows indicate where passage is still to be constructed. So we're excited to start planning the implementation of that. Next slide. And so this is just essentially that last kind of the headline of the whole thing is that the final determination is that Yale Lake remains appropriate for the settlement agreement, and an equivalent appropriateness determination for fish passage into Lake Merwin is expected very shortly. So, but we just got that final word last week. Next slide. Okay, so that wraps up our short presentations. So now we are excited to open it up to questions. So at any time, you can type your question or comment in the Q&A feature on your screen. We will ask, please keep your question brief and respectful, and submit one question at a time so that we can answer them and allow as many people as possible to participate. If you want to ask your question rather than typing it, if you want to just unmute and speak up and ask your question that way, you can use the raise hand feature in the Q&A box. And if you're participating by phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand, and then *6 to unmute yourself and ask a question. We will answer as many questions as we can. And if we run out of time and don't get to your question, you can email us at director@dfw.wa.gov. And I think someone will put that in the Q&A and we can follow up with you. So
Kessina, we do have a couple people with their hands up if we want to take those.
Absolutely.
First. So first we have Nate PK, and I'll allow Nate to talk here. And Nate, if you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Thanks, Kessina. Thanks for taking my questions. I represent about 1,000+ people in 2 Facebook groups interested in saving steelhead. This summer is national press everywhere, kind of documenting just how dire our steelhead is in Region 6. And it impacted a lot of people in terms of what they should do about it. So I have a lot of questions, but the biggest one I have is, what is WDFW doing? And do you have the funds and the backing from the state legislature or Congress to actually reverse course? As we all know, steelhead is the Washington state fish, and we hate to see that go extinct in our lifetime. So that's the first and biggest question. Do you need any resources? Do you need anything from Congress? Do we need to put something in front of voters to reverse this course?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Nate. And I will probably give the director a chance to add on. This is a huge issue, and in this region as well, when we knew we were anticipating a low run this year, and so our managers in the Columbia preemptively closed steelhead, as I'm sure you know, on the Columbia when that run came in even lower than anticipated. There were additional targeted closures in early September to try and provide some additional protections to steelhead. Waters like Drano Lake and the Snake River, the Grand Ronde, the Tucannon. So most of those were temporary, just to try and give the steelhead a chance to pass. And we tried to manage that harvest constraint piece as well as we could. But yeah, there is a bigger conversation. I might kick it over to the director for sort of the bigger picture. I can certainly, I hear what you're saying, and I can speak to what we did here in the Columbia. But Kelly, go ahead.
Thanks, Kessina. So I'll do the director approach. Do we have everything we need? No. It's going to be a huge effort to really turn things around. Kessina talked about, I think we got some great professional fish managers managing the fishery side of this. I'm very comfortable with our abilities and our approach to that. that's a small piece of the whole thing. We really need to do restoring habitat. We need to figure out passage that's much like was you heard on the Lewis River. And we need a community, a global solution to that. As you know, there's efforts going on with in Congress, Simpson's proposal. The governor's in a little different place. We basically, I don't know what all we need to do. We know a lot of the elements, but we don't have the comprehensive effort. So I would suggest we stay involved. And yeah, absolutely, we're going to need legislative, state legislative, and congressional efforts to really turn things around there. It is a dire situation, and it's going to be all hands on deck to get there. And for specifics, I'm not the right person to talk to about those elements, but we can certainly send us more specific questions into the email that's in the chat, and we'll make sure to get you the answers.
Yeah, thanks, Nate.
Okay. Do we want to take, we have one more hand up, maybe we take that one,
Sure.
and then we can move to some written questions.
Sounds
So
good.
username here is Don's Computer. So I'm going to allow you to talk, and if you can unmute yourself, please.
Okay, I had two brief questions. First, when you talk about the sea lion removal at Bonneville Dam, is that all lethal removals or is some capture and relocation?
So there is a provision in the permit to relocate animals to zoos and aquaria. And I know in the past that has happened when there were aquaria that were that had space and were interested in taking an animal, and the animal passes a health check essentially. So there is definitely that option. I don't believe under the new permit we have had any zoos or aquaria that were available to take any animals. So it has been lethal removal in these cases. Yeah.
Okay, so I would advise in the future you just not use such language as a removal rather than, you know, you're killing the animals. I mean, a little more honest spin on it. Not that I think it's necessarily wrong, but it's just like sort of glossing over it. I think that's bad PR. The second question was, what is the time frame for construction of fish passages on the Lewis River?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in their final determination issued last week, the services indicated, so the original deadline for passage at Yale was July of 2021. So clearly that has not been met. So they recommended in their determination that FERC that they would recommend to FERC a 5-year extension that would take that to passage at Yale, which is the one that they've spoken to at this point, be completed by June of 2026. So that's the time frame that they're recommending. All right, thanks for the questions. So I think, Ben, if there are no more raised hands, then we can move to some questions from the chat. So I am going to call on a panelist who we did not introduce earlier, but John Edwards. I think I'm gonna maybe ask you to speak to, well, first to introduce yourself so folks know who you are, but John is the phone a friend to speak to our pinniped operations in more detail. So John, we have a question around the additional or the new permit gives state and tribal partners a much bigger section of water to work with, the big river from I-205 upstream to McNary Dam and all tributaries where ESA listed salmon and steelhead spawn. The equipment needed to handle stellars has so far limited operations to the falls and Bonneville. Will WDFW expand operations?
Well, thanks, Kessina. And first of all, hi, everyone. John Edwards. I'm the Columbia River pinniped biologist. Yes, and so with the new permit, the expanded authorization, in this first year of it, our focus really has been work on removing stellar sea lions because we had not had that authorization before. And also kind of expanding the period throughout the year when we can do those removals at Bonneville Dam. So we've gone from, in the past, we've done 2 months of removals, and this year we're set to do 5 months of removals. And so elsewhere besides Bonneville Dam, our plan is in 2022 to expand to other areas, other tributaries. That's more of a step up for us because with these being large animals, they require lots of large, heavy equipment, and it's not exactly a very mobile operation at this point. So it's going to take acquiring new equipment, new boats, new traps to be able to perform these management functions in other areas. But we're currently working on that, and so our plan is to kind of pilot those operations and work out the kinks in 2022 and really start expanding from there, because we know those impacts are happening in other parts of the river system and not just at Bonneville.
Great, thank you, John. So I'm looking at, I've got another question in the chat, and I think I might ask Dave Howe to weigh in on this as the voice of the habitat program. But how can someone get involved in habitat restoration or planting projects? So what would you say, Dave?
Yeah, thanks for that question. We've got a host of groups that are available. It's up to the individual to decide which group is the right fit for them. Some of the ones that come to mind immediately for me are down here in Clark County. If you happen to live down in this part of the region, the Clark Public Utilities has what they call the Stream Team. And you can reach out to them, just call Clark Public Utilities and ask for Stream Team, and they'll get you the right person. See if they can get you on the group that goes out and plants a lot of trees here in a lot of our habitat areas here in Clark County. The one other group to think about is our Lower Columbia Fish Enhancement Group. Bryce Crane is the lead for that work down here in Southwest Washington. They also do a lot of planting projects in floodplain and riparian areas here in Southwest Washington, up in Cowlitz County, Wahkiakum, maybe even a little bit up in Lewis. So those are two that come to mind real quick off the top of my head. Hopefully at some point with COVID case numbers going down, we might be even available to take volunteers again for some of our wildlife areas, but that's just not at this time. So anyway, I hope that helps, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any more detailed questions.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I would also throw the Lower Columbia Estuary Partnership in the mix as well. They've just been working on this massive restoration project at Steigerwald, and I know they do a lot of work with volunteers on both sides of the river and up and down the estuary. So let's see. So I'm going to ask Sandra to weigh in on this one. So from Mike on Facebook asks, how are turkey populations doing in Southwest Washington?
Thanks, Kessina. And just to quickly add on to what Dave said previously, we have a lot of volunteer projects on our wildlife areas for things like that. We do a lot of plantings, especially on the St. Helens, the different units that we have at St. Helens. With COVID, obviously, we haven't been able to do that as much, but we usually have about 3 to 4 work parties a year. So once that gets going, those are opportunities as well. And that's through our volunteer projects on our website. So that's another place to go, but we're not really up and running yet on all of that yet. With regard to the turkey population in Southwest, so they really are, we don't really have a lot on the west side of our Southwest Washington region. They really are on the east side in the Klickitat area. And they're doing, I would say, well. You might have noticed, whoever asked this question, that we have provided increased opportunity for harvest on those populations as they have been increasing. And as a result of that, also, we've also been getting more turkey-human conflicts. So they can sometimes do quite a lot, but they're doing okay in the Klickitat area, and we don't really have viable populations on the west side of the region.
Thank you, Sandra. So Kelly, I'm not sure if this was part of the update you talked about earlier, and this is one that I feel like I ought to know, but this Brad on Facebook says, when will we be able to report catch record info on our phones?
And Bryce may have a better
Yeah.
deal, but it's going to be a while. We're working on it now. We tried to get money last year, and with budget reductions weren't able to get there. The vague answer is as soon as we can make it happen. We really want to see it happen as well. I think we, well, I'm not going to throw out a date. I almost did, and I will always regret it when I do that. Bryce, do you have any more specific information?
I don't really have any more specific information in terms of dates. I just would say that we are highly aware of the benefit that could bring us, both from a ease of reporting from the angler's perspective, but also from an improved management perspective in terms of being able to manage more aggressively in season and dial in our fisheries, which hopefully can provide more opportunity in the long run. So I think we're really, we got a lot of folks thinking about it, working on it, talking about it. It's just getting all the pieces going and the funding to get it built and out the door. And I don't have exact timelines on those either, Director, but hopefully sooner than later.
I think that we may have a little better estimates. I'm not positive if we do or not, and there are, depending on which portion of the reporting it is, legislative requirements. But if you send the question specifically to that DFW director at DFW, we'll get you our best answer possible.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I might tap John again on this one. The question is, what resources do WDFW and partner tribes require from the state legislature and Congress to do more about sea lions? So would Congress need to amend the MMPA to conduct year-round operations? And so my understanding is we have the authority to conduct year-round operations, but you really only want to conduct operations when there are sea lions present.
Right, that's correct. Yeah, in theory, we can manage 365 days a year, but sea lions are only present in the river in certain portions of the year. So we're only managing when it's, the cost benefit makes sense for that. And yeah, as I said before, right now we're managing 5 months a year, but we're looking to expand in the future. In terms of funding, we actually, our funding from the legislature was increased in the last legislative session, and that has definitely enabled us to make the expansion this year to the 5 months of management, just in terms of increased staff time that's needed, increased equipment, and then to kind of take the next step to be able to do this work in other areas like the tributaries. As I mentioned before, we do have pretty extensive equipment needs, just because the work is going to be occurring in a different environment. We're going to have different needs there. And so we are going to need additional funding to procure all of that. And at the moment, we have put in, we have a funding request that has gone to Congress. That's I believe, community development funds, and it's working its way through. And so hopefully if that makes it through the congressional process, those funds would really facilitate us expanding our work to do it in a lot more areas.
Great, thank you, John. And thanks for that question. I am wondering if I can call on Sandra again. We've got a question asking for a short update on elk hoof disease. We know this is something that folks in our region are very interested in, very concerned about. So can you give us a brief update on what we know?
Sure. I know that we talked a lot about this at our last webinar. Basically, the research is continuing with Washington, with WSU, with Dr. Margaret Wild doing her research. She has launched the captive facility and doing her study and research there, and is trying to come up with some preliminary findings. And she actually held a public outreach event that people could sign into to learn more about what's going there. going on there, and her website has a lot of information. So I highly recommend to go there for more of the detail there. WDFW this year has launched an incentive program for hunters, which it's a pilot program because it's the first time we're doing it, to see how that works. Folks might have seen some barrels out and about if you're when you're hunting, that if you can submit the hooves from an elk that you've harvested, and will be put into a drawing, and we'll see how that goes and assess and evaluate if that works in terms of targeting animals that do have hoof disease, and see if that has a management impact and implication. That's the main change in the management part for this year.
You're muted, Kessina.
So close to getting through the whole webinar without doing that. Geez, okay. So we are in the last few minutes here, so we're going to try and get to a couple more questions. So I have another one here for John from Bill on Facebook, asking what is the target number of sea lions to be removed, and are there concerns they will just get replaced with other sea lions? So 2 questions for you.
Okay, so for the first part of that, there's no target number per se, especially at the impoundments. We have the goal of getting the number of sea lions as low as possible over the long term. And in terms of the concern about them being replaced, what we found, so there's a concept called recruitment, where basically there are new animals that come to start foraging at impoundments like dams, but one of the main causes of that is they will follow upriver an experienced sea lion that knows about that food resource at the dam. And so basically the experienced sea lions recruit new ones to come to the dam. And so part of our program is that as we lethally remove the experienced sea lions, when they're gone from the river system, that means there'll be that many fewer new naive sea lions that get recruited upriver. And so we're not only bringing down the numbers by removals, but we're also bringing down the number of new animals coming in. So the goal is if we can remove them enough now, there eventually we'll get to the point where there will just be a minimal amount remaining, and probably very few coming in just on their own.
Great, thank you. And we do have a cap on the permit in terms of how many of each species we can remove over the course of the 5-year permit. And I can't remember, I want to say 540.
Correct, yeah, 540 of the California sea lions and 176 of the stellars.
Right, okay. And I think we consider that very much an upper limit of what would be even possible, right?
Yes, especially for the California number, I think it's highly unlikely we would get anywhere that close and have a need to.
Right, great, thank you, John. So I think we have time for one more, and I'm going to ask Sandra, as wildlife program manages our lands, are there any plans for improved target shooting locations in the Southwest Washington area?
So if folks don't know, we went through a pretty rigorous rewrite of the target shooting rules. And as of right now, we do not have any plans in Southwest Washington for that. But you know, that's ever evolving, and as opportunities arise and we can evaluate that to be safe, we'll definitely look at those, but we do not have any plans at this time.
All right, so let's say watch this space. We are at 7 o'clock, so I think we can go ahead and wrap up. I want to invite you to reach out to us with any follow-up questions, or call our customer service staff anytime throughout the year for assistance. They are an amazing resource. send your questions in the meantime to director@dfw.wa.gov. Anything that didn't get answered that you'd like us to dig into for you. Our Southwest region is at teamridgefield@dfw.wa.gov. So please reach out to us at any of these addresses. And Dave, you just popped up. Were you just popping up to say hi? Okay. Hi, Dave. So Kelly, any final thoughts as we're wrapping up?
Yeah, I'll touch on one question I saw pop up at the end there about whether or not we have restoration in our budget or whether we rely just on volunteers. And it's a combination of both. We definitely have it in our budget, both our state budget, federal pass-through dollars. A great example was perhaps not necessarily directly in Region 5, but our shrub step effort from the legislature last year. And then we competitively compete for any grant dollars. So there will never be enough restoration dollars for some time in the period. So we're anxious for all, and the volunteers just help us leverage that to get the maximum bang for the buck. With that, I will say, I want to just thank everybody for spending your evening with us. We know everybody has a busy life. We hope you find these helpful. If there are suggestions, go ahead and send those into those same email addresses, director@dfw.wa.gov. We really want to make these helpful for you, and you're driving the bus on this one. So if there's ideas you have to make these more useful, let us know. Thank you to staff for staying in late this evening to improve that community connection for all of us. And I wish you all a safe and happy evening.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Good night.